My name is Emily Carter. I'm 41 years old, a CPA, and for 17 years I was the quiet one, the wife who never fought back. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my husband's voice came through my car speaker as calm as if he were reminding me to grab milk on the way home. "I locked your credit card," Mark said. "You won't use it again until we have a conversation." Before I could respond, another voice pushed onto the line, my mother-in-law, Diane. "Ask us before you spend a dime," she said, satisfaction dripping from every word. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I ended the call, started my engine and drove straight to my bank. 2 hours later, my phone showed 55 missed calls. By then, everything they thought they controlled was already gone. Before I tell you what happened at that bank, let me take you back to where this really started. Because control like this doesn't arrive overnight. It arrives one small compromise at a time. Mark and I met in our 20s. He was starting a construction company with one truck and a lot of confidence. I was finishing my CPA license. We built a good life, he grew his business. I built a practice helping medical offices manage their finances. My income was excellent. Very few people, including my husband, knew exactly how excellent, because I never treated money as a competition. I just quietly handled everything: taxes, retirement, insurance, emergency savings. If I could remove a burden from our 2 kids' futures, Olivia 16 and Ethan 14, I considered the work worth it. For years that arrangement worked. Then grief walked in. 3 years earlier, Mark's father died suddenly of a heart attack and his mother Diane was alone. We invited her to live with us. At first it seemed like kindness. She cooked, she helped with the kids, she was grateful. Looking back, it was the last peaceful season we had. The change was slow. First it was harmless opinions. You spend too much on organic groceries. Then it became instructions, then rules. She looked inside my grocery bags before I'd finished unloading the car. $30 for coffee beans? She asked once. That's how people waste money. I laughed it off. I always laughed it off. Then Mark suggested we merge our finances into one household budget. Reasonable, I thought, except Diane started sitting in on those conversations, answering questions that were never directed at her. A wife doesn't need separate. Spending money, she said one evening, and she wasn't joking. Whenever I told Mark his mother was overstepping, his answer never changed. She's old-fashioned, she means well, just ignore it. I ignored it when she frowned at the price of Olivia's homecoming dress and Mark sighed. Maybe Mom has a point. I ignored it when she questioned the salmon and the imported cheese in my grocery bags and Mark said, maybe we could cut back a little. That word experience became his shield every time his mother criticised me. I never stopped contributing, even as I was slowly erased. I quietly moved money to cover Mark's payroll during a slow winter. I paid an IRS penalty out of my own account after his accountant's filing error. I used part of an inheritance to make the down payment on our lake cabin. I never told him. I never wanted credit. I just wanted the family to be okay. Then one evening, I came home early and overheard Mark and Diane in the kitchen. A man who doesn't control the money, Diane said, eventually loses control of his family. I stood frozen in the garage praying my husband would laugh it off. Instead, he said quietly, "Maybe you're right." Those 4 words broke something in me that I didn't know could break. Not because he agreed with her, but because after 17 years, he no longer trusted the woman standing beside him. A week later, Ethan's laptop died mid-assignment. I bought him a new one, nothing extravagant, just what he needed, and paid with the household card without thinking twice. Diane saw the receipt before Mark did. By the next afternoon, my husband had decided to teach me a lesson his mother had spent months coaching him toward. I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I wasn't walking into that bank angry. I was walking in clear. The branch manager, Karen Mitchell, had known me for almost a decade. She closed her office door the moment she saw my face. "What can I do for you?" "I need to separate my finances. No drama, no judgment, just methodical, professional work." I redirected my paycheck out of our joint account. I stopped the automatic transfers I'd been quietly sending into our household account for years, transfers that had covered slow seasons, tax penalties, and emergencies neither Mark nor Diane ever knew existed. I separated my personal savings, my brokerage account, and the trust my late aunt had left me. Money I'd invested rather than spent. Money that had grown steadily for years without either of them knowing it was there. I removed myself as a guarantor on Mark's business credit lines wherever the paperwork allowed. Every signature I made wasn't about punishment. It was a boundary, one I should have drawn years earlier. Is this heading toward divorce? Karen asked gently near the end. I looked at my wedding ring. I honestly don't know. Sometimes, she said, separating finances saves a marriage. Almost 2 hours later, she handed me a folder. You've spent your career protecting other people's financial futures, she said. Don't apologize for protecting your own. Outside, I finally looked at my phone. 23 missed calls, a text. Something's wrong with the business accounts. Then another. Payroll isn't processing. Then from Diane. What did you do? I almost laughed. Not because anyone was suffering, because for the first time, they were finally asking the right question. I drove home in silence. Mark's truck wasn't in the driveway when I arrived, but an hour later the front door burst open. His shirt was damp, his face pale. He wasn't angry. He looked terrified. Payroll didn't go through, he said. I know. The operating account, it's short. I know. His phone rang again. His accountant. When the call ended, his voice had dropped to a whisper. They're asking where the monthly transfers went. The room went still. For years, that money had appeared like clockwork. No one had ever wondered who it came from until it stopped. Diane demanded to know what I'd done. I told her the truth. I hadn't taken anything. I'd simply stopped putting my money, my paycheck, my investments, my accounts, into a household that had decided I needed permission to spend it. I went upstairs and came back down with a grey file box, 17 years of paperwork. I laid it on the table and started sliding folders across to Mark, one at a time. The $32,000 transfer that saved payroll one January, he thought he'd figured out on his own. The IRS penalty he thought had been waived. The down payment on the lake cabin he assumed had come from the business. I never knew, he kept saying. No, I told him. You never asked. Our kids came home in the middle of it. Olivia stood beside me without a word, the way she used to hold my hand as a little girl. Ethan admitted through tears that he'd felt guilty about the laptop, that he thought buying it had gotten me in trouble. Watching my son carry that weight was the moment I understood how much damage had quietly spread through our house. Even Diane, for the first time, didn't have a defense ready. I never wanted credit, I told Mark. I never wanted praise. I only wanted respect. He finally said the words I'd needed to hear for years. I'm so sorry. I believed he meant it. But I also knew an apology doesn't erase behaviour. It's only the first step toward changing it. The next morning, Mark asked if we could really talk. No interruptions. No Diane. That evening on the back patio, he told me he'd asked his mother to stay with his sister for a while. Then he said something that mattered more than any apology. I let my own mother convince me that protecting you meant controlling you. I became someone I never wanted to be. I told him what had actually hurt. Not that I couldn't buy groceries, that my husband believed I needed permission at all. A few days later, Diane came by with a small pie, the way she had the very first week she'd moved in. She looked 10 years older. She admitted she'd been terrified after losing her husband, afraid of being alone, afraid her son wouldn't need her anymore, and that giving advice had made her feel useful, until she convinced herself her opinion mattered more than mine. I was driving a wedge between the two people who loved each other, she said. I'm ashamed of that. I told her I loved her as my children's grandmother, but that our marriage belonged to Mark and me. She didn't argue. She simply accepted it, and that, more than any apology, told me she meant it. Mark surprised me the following week with the card of a licensed marriage counsellor. I already made the appointment, he said. In our first session, our therapist asked each of us the same question. What did you lose? I said my sense of being his partner. He said he'd lost sight of the woman who'd been standing beside him all along. Over the following months, we rebuilt, not with dramatic gestures, but with Sunday evening budget talks over coffee, where no one needed permission, only transparency. We kept a joint account for shared expenses, but each of us kept our own accounts too. Trust, I learned, doesn't require giving up your independence. It requires honouring each other's responsibility. Diane changed as well. She started volunteering at a senior centre doing their bookkeeping. She found purpose outside our marriage instead of inside it. She still offered advice sometimes, but she waited to be asked, and when we said we had it handled, she let it go. On our 18th anniversary, Mark slid an envelope across the table at the little Italian restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th. Inside was a replacement credit card, not because I needed one, but because, as he put it, this one's about trust, not spending. I never wanted the card, I told him. I know, he said. I just wanted you to know you're my equal. I was too blind to see it before. People sometimes ask if I regret driving to the bank that day. I don't. I didn't go there to punish my husband. I went there to protect my dignity, and there's an important difference. Revenge satisfies anger for a moment. Self-respect changes the rest of your life. Mark chose accountability over pride. I chose boundaries over bitterness. Together, those choices gave our marriage a second chance. One most people watching this will never see because some victories don't need an audience. They only need two people willing to grow. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Never confuse love with control, and never confuse silence with peace. The strongest person in the room is often the one who never had to raise their voice. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this story reminded you of someone you love or your own life, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Take care of the people you love and never forget to protect your own self-respect.